Someone invites you to something, a party, a gathering, a group dinner, something that by every social standard sounds like a good time. And your first feeling is not excitement. It is a quiet, specific dread. Not because you hate people, not because something is wrong with you, but because somewhere in the back of your mind, you are already calculating the cost. The energy it will take to get there. The performance of being present and engaged and appropriately social for hours. The recovery time you will need afterward just to feel like yourself again. And then someone cancels, and you feel something you are almost embarrassed to admit. Relief. Pure, immediate physical relief. You are not antisocial. You are not depressed. You are not secretly miserable or broken or someone who gave up on connection and is now dressing it up as a preference. You genuinely prefer to be alone. And not just sometimes. Often. Deeply. In a way that other people seem unable to understand and you have spent years unable to fully explain. They say you are missing out. They say you will regret it. They say humans are social creatures, as if that sentence settles the question entirely. And every time someone says that, something in you wants to ask, then why does this feel so much more like arriving than leaving? You are not running away from anything. You are running toward something. And psychology has known what that something is for longer than most people realize. Stay with me. Let's start with the group that has been this way since the very beginning. You are 7 years old. The school day just ended and the bus is loud and everyone is talking at once and someone is laughing too hard at something and the seats are too close together, and by the time you walk through your front door you are so full of other people's noise that you cannot hear yourself at all. And you go to your room. Not because you are sad. Not because anyone upset you. But because somewhere in that quiet, in that specific solitude of a closed door and no one needing anything from you, something settles. Something exhales. Something that had been holding itself tightly all day finally lets go. And you stay there until you feel like yourself again. That was not antisocial behavior. That was a nervous system doing exactly what it needed to do. And it has been doing it ever since. Psychologist Hans Eysenck at the Institute of Psychiatry in London spent decades studying the neurological basis of introversion. What he found was this. Introverts have a naturally higher baseline level of cortical arousal. Their brains are already running closer to their stimulation limit before any social interaction begins. The same party that energizes an extrovert pushes an introvert past their optimal threshold. The need for solitude afterward is not a preference. It is a biological requirement. Your need for alone time is not a personality quirk. It is your nervous system asking for what it physiologically requires. That is not antisocial. That is self-regulation at the most fundamental level. Now the second group. These are the ones who learn to prefer solitude not from wiring but from what other people taught them connection felt like. There was a time when you tried. When you showed up, opened up, let people in. When you were present and available and genuinely invested in the people around you. And what you got back was not always what you brought. The friendships that felt one-sided. The relationships that required more performance than presence. The social environments where you had to be a slightly different version of yourself just to be accepted. And slowly, quietly, without a single dramatic decision, you started preferring the company of yourself. Not because people disappointed you once, because solitude never did. Psychologist John Cacioppo at the University of Chicago spent decades studying the difference between loneliness and solitude. What he found was precise and important. Loneliness is the distress of unwanted disconnection. Solitude is the satisfaction of chosen aloneness. They feel completely different from the inside and produce completely different outcomes in the brain. People who choose solitude regularly show lower cortisol levels, stronger sense of identity, and higher reports of life satisfaction than people who socialize out of obligation. You are not lonely. You are selective. And there is a distance between those two things so vast it changes everything. That is not giving up on people. That is knowing the difference between connection and performance. And the third group, the ones who prefer solitude not from wiring or history but because of what happens to them in it. When you are alone, something becomes possible that doesn't exist anywhere else. Your thinking gets clearer. Your creativity surfaces. The ideas that never quite arrive in the noise of other people's presence show up quietly and fully in the silence of your own. You process better. You feel more. You understand yourself in ways that require the absence of everyone else. Psychologist Esther Buchholz at New York University studied what she called the need for alone time, a developmental and psychological requirement as fundamental as the need for connection. Her research found that solitude is not the absence of relationship. It is the condition under which the self becomes most coherent, most creative, and most genuinely capable of real intimacy when connection does occur. The people who know themselves best are almost always people who spent significant time alone. Not avoiding the world. Developing the inner resources to meet it fully. That is not isolation. That is the most productive thing a human being can do with silence. But here is where we need to be honest with each other. Because everything described so far, the neurological requirement, the earned preference, the creative and psychological richness of solitude, all of it is real. All of it is true. And none of it is the complete picture. Because there is a difference between solitude that restores you and solitude that has slowly become the only place you feel safe. Between choosing to be alone and being unable to choose anything else. Between a person who moves between connection and solitude with genuine freedom and a person who has quietly stopped moving at all. Psychologist Abraham Maslow at Brandeis University found that the healthiest, most self-actualized people shared one consistent trait. They genuinely enjoyed solitude, and they also genuinely enjoyed deep connection. Not one or the other. Both. Fully. Without one threatening the other. So here is the question only you can answer. Does your solitude make you more capable of connection when you choose it? Or has it become a reason to never choose it at all? Because one is a superpower, and the other is a wall with very comfortable furniture inside. Be honest. Not with anyone else. With yourself. Because the answer matters more than the comfort of not asking. Here is what the research shows that almost nobody talks about. A study published in the British Journal of Psychology found that highly intelligent people report significantly lower life satisfaction the more time they spend socializing, the opposite of the general population. For certain minds, solitude is not a compromise. It is optimal functioning. Your preference for being alone is not a deficit in your social wiring. For a brain like yours, it may simply be the condition under which you work best, think clearest, and live most fully. So here is your permission slip. You are not antisocial. You are not damaged. You are not someone who failed at connection and rebranded it as a lifestyle. You are someone whose inner world is rich enough to live in. whose best thinking happens in silence, whose energy is finite and precious and worth protecting, who has learned, through wiring or wisdom or both, that the quality of your presence with others depends entirely on the quality of your time without them. You do not owe anyone your constant availability. You do not have to explain why the quiet feels like home. You do not have to apologize for needing to come back to yourself before you can genuinely show up for anyone else. Solitude is not the opposite of connection. It is the preparation for it. Drop a comment. What is the one thing you love doing alone that you could never fully explain to someone else? I read every single one. And if this felt like permission you have been waiting a long time to receive, subscribe. I make these every week for people who find more of themselves in silence than in any crowd. And if you've ever wondered why certain people drain you completely while others leave you feeling more like yourself, why some connections restore you and others cost everything, that one is next. You were never antisocial. You were always just someone who knew exactly where they felt most.